Hello, Patricia. Please can you introduce yourself and what you do and your work, please?
Thanks, Jeremy. My name is Patricia Cardona. I'm an expert in child sexual abuse prevention, and I teach parents on how to prevent and detect child sexual abuse.
Incredible. So we have been in contact via Instagram for some time, following each other's work. And the just to give people some context of why we decided to have this conversation, it's because a couple of podcasts ago, I released an episode which was titled "Grooming a Child Would Be Easy," and I in that podcast I went through the different age ranges and gave my thoughts and opinions on why that statement is true and what we can do about it. Now, one of
Mhm.
the things that I went through in that podcast was when I grouped the ages of 0 to 2 years old, pre-verbal, I explained, because this is what I thought to be correct, I explained that there is no chance that you could protect your children from sexual abuse of those ages. And the reason why is because they cannot feed back to you that anything has happened. So, really, unless you're going to follow them around everywhere they go, you can't guarantee their protection. And that is when you wrote to me and said that you have some information in particular that you'd like to give us with regards to protecting infants, pre-verbal children, and what we can do as parents to ensure better safety for them. So I will hand over to you, please.
Yes. It is true that when they are, the youngest, the more vulnerable, and the same goes for children with, with some challenges with communication. And the key here is that, of course, the child cannot tell you anything because they are non-verbal. So that's impossible. And in most cases, as we know, child sexual abuse don't leave any kind of marks in the body. And the thing is that we as adults need to be proactive and talk with other adults that are in our child's environment. So if we are leaving our child with a family member, we need to have the talk about boundaries, the talk about consent, the talk about privacy, body parts. So in that, the younger you start, the better. I love working with pregnant women, moms, because they can start having all these conversations and already see who in their surrounding are open to talk about it, are pleased that they are talking about it, and how they can protect their child and how can they be part of that protection. And others will be reluctant, like, well, you are, what are you talking about? You're exaggerating. It's just a baby. That people think you're breaking already their innocence,
Mm,
this kind of nonsense. And you
mm,
might need to take a step back and not be around those people with your child as
mm,
often if you can.
mm.
And you have a question.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
First of all, I've got two questions actually. Let's do the first one.
Yes.
So um, you are explaining that even though the child is pre-verbal, meaning that they can't communicate any concerns that they have, you can be proactive as a parent by having the talk not to the infant but to the adults that the infant will be around.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you're
Yes.
suggesting, right? So first of all, that is conversations that adults aren't going to want to have with people. And the reason why I believe most of us would be like that is because when you go to somebody's house, the first thing you don't want to start talking about is protecting your child or how to protect your child. So, can you just help us with how that conversation would go?
Yes. This is a difficult conversation for everybody because we haven't been, at least not me, maybe not you, in our generation in general, we have not been taught about consent and about what's private and what's not in, especially when it comes to babies. and infants. Like everybody's touching babies and hugging and kissing
Mm.
them. Like that's so cute. I don't know in England, but in
Same.
Spain, I had big cheeks when I was little, and, and everybody loved my cheeks. Everybody was just pinching them, and some
Mm.
people were even biting my cheeks,
Wow.
and that was hurting. So it's not a conversation that you start with your big shield, like the warrior, like, here I am, like, I'm going to protect my child. That's an option, but you will be probably by yourself the rest of your life. And and the other one is just to, imagine we are friends, right? Because if I'm not friends with you, I won't go to your house probably to
Yes.
give you my baby, right? But we are friends for a long time, and I said, and I could come to you and say, Jeremy, uh, I am quite concerned about my child's safety, and even when now being it's a baby, but I still I'm asking him or her when I'm changing the diaper for permission, and I say, I'm gonna change your diaper, I'm gonna remove it, I'm gonna touch your intimate body parts because I need to clean them out, and it's gonna take me maybe 10 seconds, 15 seconds, I don't know, 1 minute, and if it's a
Mhm.
mess, maybe some more time, and then because you need this to be healthy and clean and taken care of. So and not take more time than necessary. I have seen situations where adults comment on the children's body parts and maybe tickle them because it's fun, and the baby will take it as a pleasurable thing because we all know it's pleasurable when you get tickled anywhere
Mm.
in the body. And I would communicate you this, like, Jeremy, this is how I do it at home. I would appreciate very much if you do it exactly in the same way. Please
Okay.
let me know, how do you feel about it? I know it's not a comfortable conversation. It's been very hard for me to talk to you about this. Acknowledge how hard it is for you too, and
Mm.
see how the other person is receiving it.
Mm.
And and maybe the person on the other side is someone who is very playful and is, kissing the baby everywhere when they're changing because they are very charming, and you can have to say, I've been doing this all my life. Maybe that person is a nurse,
Mm.
family member, or it can be someone in the kindergarten. You need to have those conversations, and always because they would understand when you're taking care of them or not, if that's part of the education, right? You
Mm.
can cheat them because
Mm.
everybody can trick a child
Yeah.
because of their innocence. But if the majority of people around the child is respecting the child and treating the child with respect, if someone is not doing it, the child will be able
Mm.
to discern, and maybe not with 2, but maybe with 3 or 4 years old, you can say, in the kindergarten, they clean me for a very long time,
Mm.
and they tickle me or things like that. And then it can will be able to communicate. But obviously, when it's a baby, there's no way, and you do need to have that conversations with everybody who's going to be one to one, even with the pediatrician.
Mm. Okay. Okay. So, we're talking about implementing good practices from the day that they are born. Meaning, when you're changing a nappy, you're just talking to them because that's great. Talking to them is great for their brain development anyway, right? So, conversation with infants, I recently learned conversation with infants is phenomenal for their brain development. So, when you're cleaning their nappy, you're just letting them know. Why not? Why not have that conversation? It's fine. So, like, I'm going to clean your nappy now. It's not going to take long. You're comforting them through that conversation, and you're just communicating with them through this process. And then when they turn to 1, that's pretty normal for you. And then all your relatives that come over when you are changing. your child's nappy, see you doing that, and I can only imagine would be very respectful and actually take an interest in the way that you are changing the nappy like that. And then when the child starts to get to toddler age and starts to become verbal, they, as you mentioned, they start to see this as a normal thing. This consent, this respecting their body.
Yes.
So, okay, I can see how that could evolve really well. And first of all, I want to say that, okay, so do I want to go there? Just let me think for a moment. There's quite like three or four
Fine.
directions I want to try to take the conversation. Um, okay, let's try this. So, for the people that are watching this or listening to this, and the part where we start talking about maybe the kissing of the baby. I don't want to spend too long on this. I just want your opinion on it. Okay. So, because I know that there's always opposing thoughts and different opinions. So, if you have a grandma who's always kissing the child because she loves the child, she's all over the child, she's hugging the child all the time.
Yes.
Are we going down the wrong path if we make that a problem when it is just a loving relationship?
No, I don't think we're making that a problem. They can have the loving relationship, but you can still have the conversation with your mom. Perhaps not in that very moment,
Mm.
because very emotional. Imagine grandma haven't seen the child in 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe a month, and they're like, "Oh, my baby, my baby."
Yeah.
But the baby might not recognize her, right?
Mm.
And
Mm.
it's like it's just a big lady coming to
Mm.
him or her, and it's like maybe he's very happy, maybe not. It's like, who's this person,
Mm.
right? So you can have your conversations with your mom and with your dad, and always from a place of love. That's very important. That we are coming. You want to build. You remember I said the shield before.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
build a shield around with your community, with
Mm.
your
Mm.
family, with
Mm.
your friends. That they are all part of it. So we need to, it needs to come from a place of love and understanding, and also understanding that we're all from different backgrounds and maybe cultures and generations, and all that needs to be taken into account
Yeah.
to have the conversations, but always coming from a place of including everyone in the protection of the child.
Right.
Even when you do it from that place, you will find people who says, I don't know how to treat your child anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Please
And
continue.
and and then you might need to have more conversations with that person. But if that person observe, their reaction, even you say, please don't, I don't know, whatever they might do, like
Mm.
fussing with their hair or
Mm.
touching the bum or
Mm.
whatever, observe their behavior and see, because as we know, it can be a progression, right? That abuses start with non-sexual touch, then to progress and advance towards sexual touch. And people that might get defensive may have their own issues. We don't know. But if it becomes a problem, an issue to have your child around this person, then I would try to minimize as much as possible contact with this person. Sometimes it's someone in your family and it's really difficult. But if it's an acquaintance or a friend, it's a little bit easier. It might hurt, but they might need to go through their own process. Or, as we know, it could be a perpetrator because majority of them are in our environment. So we need to protect them from those few people that are in our environment.
Okay, brilliant. And if this person who's scruffing the child's hair and the child isn't really, you can see the child doesn't find that very playful. That's quite a nice example. Or tickling the child, and the child has had the fun part of that, but now it's going a bit too far. Even if that person isn't there to perpetrate against the child, maybe that person is there because they're just having fun with the child, but they're just taking it a little bit too far. This conversation will help in all of these levels, because it protects your child, as in it protects their well-being, even if it's nothing sexual, even if this person isn't a perpetrator. It's you're actually just policing how you want your child treated by other people. Now, something that I can really actually relate to is when my nephew started getting to about 2 or 3, I'd say. We were always wrestling, right? We're always wrestling. We're jumping around. I'm playing. I'm rolling around, and there were a couple of occasions where I took it too far, where
Mhm.
he all of a sudden wasn't it wasn't play anymore. It was just a bit too, it was probably a bit too forceful. I'm a big guy compared to him at 3 years old. And I remember my wife saying to me, look, you didn't recognize his facial expression there. Like you didn't see that actually the wrestle had gone too far. You need to be a bit careful. You need, and she talked me through that. Now, when she talked me through that, I actually felt really sad because I thought he was always enjoying the wrestling all the time. Actually, it really taught me a good lesson. And even though I felt sad in the moment, I am very much, a lot more conscious about when we do rough and tumble play now with him. And actually, what's very positive and very encouraging, and maybe he's learning this at school, is he's now 4, 4.5. There's a number of times when we're playing a game and we set the rules out. You know, children are amazing, aren't they? And we set
Yeah.
the rules of the game. And as soon as he's had enough, maybe we have a little bit of a wrestle. He's like, oh, no more. And I'm straight off him. So he
Yeah.
lets me know. He lets me know. But I respect that. I respect that he's had enough of that now. So if I didn't respect that he'd had enough of that now and I wanted to push a little bit too far, this is where these conversations can be brilliant because you're letting your family know, you're letting the people who are commonly around your children know that these are the kind of boundaries. I'm just protecting my child. I hope you appreciate that I'm doing this too. And then we can continue like that. So, okay, I really like this. So,
I think
some,
what you just said about
yeah,
setting the rules of the game is so important for any game and
okay,
in any moment. So, a joke is only fun when everybody's laughing.
yes,
So this is the same. So really good to set this when you're playing. If it's not fun for someone, then it's not a game anymore.
brilliant. Yes, so true. A little earlier in this conversation, you mentioned about you said the sentence ruining their innocence, which I know lots of people feel that these conversations would have that effect on a child. And then you use the word nonsense. So I would like to hear your opinions on why the fear of potentially ruining a child's innocence with these conversations is nonsense, please.
Yeah. Well, you can ruin the child's innocence if you don't give the right information at the right moment, right? We are Yesterday I was giving a class and there was a lot of comments and I say if your child is already 7 years old, you should start talking about porn. And they say, do I need to talk about porn to my child? And I say, well, not really. But you need to tell your child that there are some images that are for adults only. And they will understand because we understand, children understand they cannot drink, they cannot drive, they understand this perfectly. So you have to give them the information that they maybe when they are on the internet, they will find images of naked people doing things. And these are not appropriate for children. These are not meant for children. So you're not going to give a lesson in pornography, but you're going to tell them, give them the right information for the age they have.
Right.
And then you don't ruin their innocence. You are giving them knowledge so they can protect themselves and say no to things they don't want to do. Probably if a 7-year-old child will not drink whiskey,
Mm,
they say, no, my mom says I cannot drink whiskey. My mom
mm,
says I cannot drive a car. Right? The majority would say something like that. There will
mm,
be some others,
mm.
but and the same goes for anything in relation with sexual education that has to be done at the right moment, and you can really start early when you're changing the nappies, telling about the body parts, naming everything by their official name, not call them I don't know what names you use
Mm,
in UK, but are hundreds of names that
yeah.
you can use to avoid saying vulva or penis or testicle. So let's not avoid that. Those words don't ruin at all the innocence. So just to be clear.
Yeah, I find it, I find the nicknames that we have for private parts. I'm actually very interested to find out where that originated from and why it originated. I would love if there were like historians out there that, that know the answer to that particular question. I'd love to speak to them because it's so unusual. We don't do that with any other
Yeah.
parts of our body. We label every part with the proper name, and so I don't understand why we've gone down that road of nicknames. And um, why do you think it's useful to name the genitals with their proper names?
Well, I think it's very useful because it's a common language for everybody, right? Everybody understands. And if you, maybe in your family or in your region, they talk it in one way or the other. And if you don't name the body parts by their proper name, you're already telling the child, this is something we don't talk about in this family. This is something to be ashamed of. Has to be hidden. This is taboo in a way when you do that, avoiding the names. Or there are families that even they call it the unnamed parts, and that's very global. And this, when sexual abuse happens, is very detrimental for children. I know a couple of cases. One, that a girl said, "Mommy, my tummy hurts, but in the low part of the tummy." And the mom said, "Don't eat more ice cream, please. Don't eat more ice cream." And she was complaining, like, "Please don't eat more ice cream. That's it. Stop eating ice cream. This is why your tummy hurts." But it wasn't her tummy.
Wow.
It was her vulva and her vagina. And
Wow.
who was a little girl. And when I did a training with Darkness to Light, there was a girl who went to school saying that her dad eats her cookie and or her muffin, and the teacher found it completely normal. She thought maybe she's baking and that dad eats her muffin, but it turned out that the muffin was her vulva.
Mm.
And we don't have a common, and that probably kept happening until some point that was discovered. I don't remember at what point. But if we don't have the proper names, abuse can happen so easily because you can trick the child. And if imagine you exposed to a child and the child says, "Don't show me your penis or your testicle. I don't want to see them."
Mm.
That's wrong.
Mm.
And that gives a lot of power. And if you use the correct body parts, it's unusual in general, even for adults, right?
Mm.
And like, whoa, this person is not ashamed, is not in fear, is not doesn't find their intimate or private body parts disgusting or something not to be talked about.
Yeah, so you're it's empowering the child, understanding the correct knowledge, but if ever confronted with somebody that's trying to do them wrong, when they respond with that confidence, somebody who's trying to exploit them, in particular an adult, will stay away from that child actually because that's not an easy target for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you're really equipping these young children. Do you do you ever sit with yourself and feel sad that we have to do this with such young children?
Uh, yeah, it feels, I have like two sides. Once I'm very sad because these things exist and they are not going to diminish. Is happening. And last week I was in some conferences about how children are target of pornography at a very young age. So that makes me really,
Mm.
really sad that this is our reality. But on the other hand, I'm very happy that every day we are more and more people working to protect children. So yes, I'm sad, but I am happy that there are few of us, and few of us who are survivors who can tell, the devastating effects of being abused as a child. I didn't say it at the start, but I'm a survivor as well of intrafamilial and extrafamilial sexual abuse. Yes, it's sad, but it's also how you say, for me, it's like an engine I have inside, like a motor to really work on this. I don't want this to happen to any child.
Would you say that the situations that you went through in your childhood, one of the fires, that engine, the thing that really drives that engine is because you are now going around and teaching, and you've got your program online. The things that you are now communicating with people are all things that if you had that education in those times where you were going through the situation, it could have possibly been prevented?
Well, my abuses could have been prevented.
Right.
Could have been prevented, but they weren't. I was exposed to those abuses. And because in two of the ones I remember as the biggest ones were in two different occasions, once with a woman and another one with a man.
Okay.
I don't think you should ever leave your child with a person who is drunk or has drank a little bit too much.
Right.
And then how you want to label it, or tipsy or whatever you want to label. You can never leave your child with someone who has ingested any kind of alcohol or other drugs. If I would have not been with those people in that moment, and if they would have been sober, I don't think they would have done what they did. And in other occasions, it would have been much more difficult because it was in the house where I grew up. And then it's much more difficult to prevent and escape from those situations. And I didn't even know I was being sexually abused. And this is now why I teach the non-physical contact sexual abuse that exists. Because there's a lot without physical contact that is devastating.
Right. I would really like it if you could speak a little bit more about that, because it would be confusing to many people out there. How could sexual abuse happen without any contact?
Well, I'll give you some examples.
Please.
One of them is voyeurism.
Okay.
Right? To observe the child when it's naked. And I'll give you an example that happened in my school. One of the best teachers that the school had, the most popular teacher and friends with every parent, when we went to gymnastics, he was getting into our changing room and asking the girls to remove our panties and everything because he said that gymnastics are better without underwear. And he was there to observe us. And he was doing exactly the same to the boys.
Okay.
In that situation, I was like running very fast, and I think he never saw me because I never removed it. But the boys could not escape because he was demanding them to do that, and he could be very sweet with the parents and very scary with the children.
Right.
And then he will put us to do some gymnastics with we had these big shorts, wide shorts from the 80s. And he was doing us to open our legs and spread out, and he was walking around to see what he could see. That could be one example.
Right.
Or it could be a family member that is always in the shower when you are there. Like looking for every excuse to look at you naked, and making you feel uncomfortable. Because I'm not against people, walking naked in the house, going from one place to the other, changing. I'm not saying that that's voyeurism or exhibitionism. That's normal, but there's another layer, another component that the victim feels, or if there was a person that was always entering the shower, when I was in the shower, when I was in my room that I wanted to change, always getting in the room to see how it's changing and looking at me and saying things, really, really uncomfortable. I didn't know how much that impact had in me until uh, I knew I didn't like it, but I didn't know what it was. And then I read a report from UNICEF, and that was labeled as child sexual abuse. And then is when it clicked, right? And I felt utter disgust for my own body because I felt like I've been kind of violated during years and years. That's voyeurism. Another one could be exhibitionism. I say you can walk around, but you can, expose and I don't know if I have the word in English, but make the child observe your body.
Okay.
Yeah. Or another one is exposition to if you play a porn video to a child, that's also abuse. And I know a case here in Mallorca, there was a teacher playing videos to a child of him with his wife.
Right.
And now that teacher is in jail, thankfully. And the other one could be verbal. Words are they can drill you. They can destroy you, and they can. One thing is sexual education and emotional education, and another one is to tell the other person, the child, like jokes that are beyond funny or describe sexual intercourse or any other sexual practice to a child in a way that is not educational and in a level of detail that is abuse, is crossing the boundary. If I'll give you an example, if for instance a child hears the word fellatio in the school and say, what is that? And it's a little child, and say, you can say, this is something that adults do, is not something that children do. And what they do is they kiss their genitals. And probably the kid will go, ew, this is disgusting. Shut up, this is not possible. That's one thing. And the other thing will be to give a full description in detail.
Okay.
Of what it is and the pleasure and what happens, the fluids and all that stuff.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, absolutely. That's a great explanation. So you had 3 points there, and in summary, it's all about the non-contact sexual abuse can be carried out where you're crossing boundaries, right? You're crossing boundaries, and you are exploiting the child. You're not there's no contact, as you mentioned, but you're exploiting the child. The adult is exploiting the child for some perverse fantasy that they have in their head. They're using the child, and that's why we say no. That's why we call it sexual abuse, even though it's got no contact. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, and so sexual abuse is an abuse of power.
Right.
Primarily, right? And this is the power they have over the child to manipulate. And these could be gates to other kinds of abuse, right?
Okay.
And we need to be very mindful and very careful on how, and to give this, to have this information ourselves as an adults, and then to explain to the child that these things exist, but it's not a talk, This is like a way of educating your child.
Because the story that you just gave about the teacher and the gymnastics, I mean, that's very striking. We would hope that if we were to carry out the correct education, discussions, building the child's confidence when they feel uncomfortable or they get a bad gut feeling, if we can carry all of those out successfully in an age appropriate way throughout their life, as we talked about from infancy, we stand the best chance that the children in that changing room will say to that teacher, that's crossing the boundary. That's against the rules. What are you doing? and then call that teacher out. And as soon as that happens, the teacher becomes the small person and the children become the people in power. That's what we're trying to achieve, isn't it? And there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee. This isn't fail safe. Like if you do all the correct things from a child's infancy to as they grow up into younger children, young teenagers, older teenagers, it's never 100% guarantee that you're going to be able to keep them safe. But my approach is, or my attitude is, we should do everything we can to maximize the chance. You agree?
Of course,
Yeah.
100%. How can I not agree with this? I don't have children, but if I had, that would be one of my priorities would be make sure that they are not sexually abused.
Mm.
I will be, okay with being that mom that is talking about it, that is raising her hand in school when they want to expose pictures of the children on internet and say, no, my child, please. Or, I will be okay with being that mom, right? And I will have people with me and people against me. But I will make it a priority. I know a couple and they make this an absolute priority in their lives. They have 2 children and they go to all after school things, activities with them, and they stay in class.
Okay.
So they have compromised their income to make sure that their children are safe in every environment. Right? I know many people cannot do that.
Yes.
But they also have not had their conversation with the after school teachers, right? But if you
Yes.
have these conversations with the after school teachers, then your child will be safer.
Yeah, for me, I feel it's more practically viable for a parent to for in most in a lot of situations for the parent to speak with the teacher in the after school club that their child is going to, also of course do all this good practices that we're talking about with their child to maximize the chances, because I mean a lot of people wouldn't be able to leave work early to support their child in an after school club. But also my concern would be that there has to be a balance, doesn't there? Because if you're following your child around everywhere, then first of all, I don't know how healthy that is. There's a really good analogy that I've used before, and that is and it fits with everything that we're talking about today. As a parent, you can stand next to the child for their whole childhood, and with your knife, cut down the snakes that are approaching that child for the child. But unfortunately, you can't be in the garden with that child all the time. It's impossible. So actually, what you need to do is you need to teach the child how to use the knife to cut the snakes themselves. So I feel like that fits with what we're saying here. Like for most parents, in practical terms, there's going to need to be a balance between what you can and can't do due to the other pressures of life. But I think what you have explained is so valuable, with just being more vigilant with where they go, who they're interacting with. I mean, sports is going to be another great example, okay? Because let's say you have a young son, and they're an aspiring football player, and all they talk about is football. Many young boys are like this. All they talk about is football. All they want to do is play football, and all they want to be is a footballer. Now they play for their local club, and maybe actually they're quite good at this, and they see that there is some potential there, of course. Now that child holds a vulnerability immediately to exploitation from a coach, because the coach calls the shots, they make the decisions, they pick the team, they put that child forward for the next level of football, and that it creates a power dynamic that could be exploited very easily. But if you've equipped your child, if they're confident, they know the rules, they'd be confident to come and speak to you about it. Another piece of information that I heard that is just so valuable is letting the child know that they can come to you with anything and they won't be in trouble.
Oh yeah, that's really, really important, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's not only saying it, right? It's also showing it. Because for instance, you tell that to your child because you have things in mind like sexual abuse or any other trouble that maybe they break a window or whatever.
Yes.
But if when they are at home, they throw a glass on the floor and you yell at them,
Mm,
like, I'm not going to trust what you're saying, I'm going to trust what you're doing.
right.
So if you at home are using punishment, prices to educate and yelling and then emotional blackmail to raise your child, which is was common when I grew up, that if you're good, I give you a prize. If you're bad, you cannot leave the room. If you break something, you pay it or you have to clean it or blah, blah. If you use these techniques, then how's your child going to trust you? It's going to be difficult. So you need to use a different way of educating. You have to educate because if your friend comes home and breaks a glass, you're not going to yell at your friend, I hope. If you do, you will be out of policy. You have plastic glasses. But treat them with respect and take the time to educate. Because if you give prizes, if you punish and you use blackmail, it's the same techniques that the predators are
Wow.
using.
Wow. Yeah. Same techniques.
Same techniques, and we know it.
Wow. Okay. Can you speak a little bit about what you are doing for work, please, and the courses and etc. that you are presenting?
Yes, I'm doing several things. One is my activism part. I am part of a Brave movement, and we is a survivor created and survivor center nonprofit. And with them, what I do is we've been in the European Parliament a couple of times because we want the new European regulation to be approved, and it's taking too much time.
Wow.
There's not so much interest in protecting children, and they disguise it with GDPR and privacy things, and also we work on prevention and healing as a nonprofit. And what I do as a Patricia Cardona, I have developed a method, a 5-step method to prevent and detect child sexual abuse, and I give trainings to parents. These trainings are depending on the program, between 6 and 12 weeks. So they can reprogram and retrain themselves, because it's not that easy to have those conversations. It's not only about having the information, but putting the information in action so you can actually protect your child. And this is what I do. And I love seeing the transformation in parents being able to have conversations with their own family. This is the part that is more moving, right? When I see someone can finally have a conversation with their mom or with their dad, or with a sister or with a wife, because they haven't been able to have those conversations, and now they can have them. So, and then being able to listen. For me, it's very important that we spend time listening to your child. Many times we ask so many questions and they're not so interested in answering those questions, especially when they're teenagers. So it's better to say, I also help them to create a space where they can listen to a child and get information in that way, without judging and without criticizing. So that's what I do.
Are the is this program this did you say 6 and 12 week program? Yeah.
Yeah.
Are those programs aimed at parents who have children of particular ages, or just parents?
It's just parents. But I always recommend the sooner you start, the better. So if you start when your child is newborn, I say, I don't have time because he's newborn, but you'll never have time.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you, so it's better when you start when you are pregnant, even. But so breaking news, parents. If you're not a parent yet, I'm not a mom, but what I hear from every mom is that the time is gone, and when you have the second one, it's incredible. So there will never be time. So you have to make time. You have to make this a priority. And then it's like, crossing the street. We make it a priority not to be run over by a car. And we will tell the child thousands of times, look left, look right, or in England, look left, right,
Yeah.
left. Before crossing the street and holding their hand until they can do it. And it's a process, but it's integrated in our lives. So it's just a matter of integrating the culture of respect, consent, in general, not only about sex. Because if now, imagine there's someone here, there's no one here at the moment, but that decides to turn on the music without asking me if they can turn the music on. And I said, well, I'm having a conversation with Jeremy and we don't want music on the background. So, right, it's disturbing. So it's just about having this respect for everything. And you have so many chances every day with if you watch TV, with what to watch, what not to watch, the space on the sofa, like there's many opportunities every day to talk about it. In the media, there's news and you can comment, or TV shows or commercials. There's plenty of opportunities to talk about it without being a pain. You can do it without being a pain. I don't know if I manage because I'm in this and like everything I see, like, okay, this is this and that. This commercial looks like that. No, I don't know if I manage, but I think normal people can manage.
Yeah, okay, that's great. That's great. On your Instagram, I noticed you were using your mother tongue. What
Yes.
what language is that?
Spanish.
Okay, amazing. And is this course delivered in what language?
So I've done it in English when I was living in the Netherlands, and now I'm in Spain and I do it in Spanish. But if there will be enough people interested
Yes.
in doing it in English, I will be very happy to do it in English because when I created it, I did it in English.
Okay.
So,
Yep. Yeah,
so
that's brilliant.
yeah.
And so we will, of course, include the notes and links to your course in the show notes of this podcast. And I really encourage people that can or would like to go and get involved in that course and upskill yourself, because we are all looking to become more aware and equipped to protect those young children that are around us. So I thank you so much. That was an amazing conversation. I learned so much, and I'm very sure that everybody that's listening will have had too. Are there any final thoughts? Anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to cover before we summarize and finish up?
Well, I can talk for 12 weeks about it. But I would tell parents, like, if you haven't taken the first step, which is naming body parts by their own name because it's difficult for you, start talking about it, but first to yourself, maybe write it down, see how it feels, and start to make it comfortable for you, and then start having like that first conversation and acknowledge that it's also awkward for you. And that would be like the first step, I think, towards prevention. And start, if you have listened to this podcast, which I hope so, because you're here at the end, share it with family, with friends, comment on it. Like, I've listened to this podcast. There's Jeremy and Patricia were talking about this and that. And what do you think? And start conversations with something from the outside, which is easier to have, and see what the reactions of people around. And you might be surprised, and more people in your environment thinking exactly the same along the same lines as you.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So please, everybody that is here at the end of this podcast, you obviously thought it was valuable and enjoyed it because you're still here. And please action that. Please send it to a friend and start a conversation with them. As you have mentioned, if it's It is awkward to do this with the young people in your family. So send it to a friend and ask them what they think and have a good conversation about it. At the very least, you're going to have an interesting conversation with a friend. So that's a bonus, even if you do nothing else with it. And please do leave your comments in these episodes because the algorithms, the social media apps, they don't favor these conversations, even though they definitely should. And what I would like to say to you, thank you for, is this is probably one of the more valuable conversations we've had in the way that there's no confrontation here. A lot of the stories that I'm reporting on, a lot of the conversations that I'm having, in particular when I broach the topic of offenders, it's very conflicting. It's very uncomfortable. It's very, I don't know if I want to listen to any more of this. But this is probably going to set a new standard for me to start changing a little bit of my work, which I knew was going to come from this anyway, to be so productive. You know, it's so productive. It's so fruitful. The conversation that we've had today. So I thank you so, so much. Where can people find you, please?
Well, first, thank you. Thank you so much, Jeremy, because for me, it's been an honor. I've been following you like, wow, this guy's talking about it when I still didn't break my silence. So you've been an inspiration for me for a couple of years.
Thank you.
And continue being that. Where can they find me? You can find me on Instagram, and because of the algorithms don't favor me, I'm shadow banned.
Oh, no.
So you have to type my entire name, otherwise I don't show up in search. So it's THE, like the underscore Patricia underscore Cardona, and then you'll find me. Or you can send me an email to let's talk at thepatriciacardona.com.
Fantastic. And again, we will have all the links in the show notes below. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Jeremy.